lizards they are lazy and half torpid. When not frightened they slowly crawl along with their tails and bellies dragging on the ground. They often stop, and doze for a minute or two with closed eyes and hind legs spread out on the parched soil. They inhabit burrows, which they sometimes make between fragments of lava, but more generally on level patches of the soft sandstone-like tuff. The holes do not appear to be very deep, and they enter the ground at a small angle, so that when walking over these lizard warrens, the soil is constantly giving way, much to the annoyance of the tired walker. Works alternately the opposite sides of its body. One front leg for a short time scratches up the soil, and throws it toward the hind foot, which is well placed so as to heave it beyond the mouth of the hole. That side of the body being tired, the other takes up the task, and so on alternately. I watched one for a long time, till half its body was buried. I then walked up and pulled it by the tail. At this it was greatly astonished, and soon shuffled up to see what was the matter, and then stared me in the face, as much as to say, "What made you pull my tail?" They feed by day, and do not wander far from their burrows. If frightened, they rush to them with a most awkward gait. Except when running downhill, they cannot move very fast, apparently from the lateral position of their legs. They are not at all timorous. When attentively watching any one, they curl their tails, and, raising themselves on their front legs, nod their heads vertically with a quick movement, and try to look very fierce. But in reality they are not at all so. If one stamps on the ground, down go their tails, and off they shuffle as quickly as they can. I have frequently observed small, fly-eating lizards, when, watching anything, nod their heads in precisely the same manner, but I do not know at all for what purpose. If this Amblyrhynchus is held and plagued with a stick, it will bite it very severely. But I caught many by the tail, and they never tried to bite me. If two are placed on the ground and held together, they will fight, and bite each other till blood is drawn. The individuals, and they are the greater number, which inhabit the lower country, can scarcely taste a drop of water throughout the year. But they consume much of the succulent cactus, the branches of which are occasionally broken off by the wind. I several times threw a piece to 2 or 3 of them when together, and it was amusing enough to see them trying to seize and carry it away in their mouths, like so many hungry dogs with a bone. They eat very deliberately, but do not chew their food. The little birds are aware how harmless these creatures are. I have seen one of the thick-billed finches picking at one end of a piece of cactus, which is much relished by all the animals of the lower region, whilst a lizard was eating at the other end, and afterwards the little bird, with the utmost indifference, hopped on the back of the reptile. I opened the stomachs of several, and found them full of vegetable fibres and leaves of different trees, especially of an acacia. In the upper region they live chiefly on the acid and astringent berries of the guayavita, under which trees I have seen these lizards and the huge tortoises feeding together. To obtain the acacia leaves, they crawl up the low stunted trees, and it is not uncommon to see a pair quietly browsing, while seated on a branch several feet above the ground. These lizards, when cooked, yield a white meat, which is liked by those whose stomachs soar above all prejudices. Humboldt has remarked that in intertropical South America all lizards which inhabit dry regions are esteemed delicacies for the table. The inhabitants state that those which inhabit the upper damp parts drink water, but that the others do not, like the tortoises, travel up for it from the lower, sterile country. At the time of our visit, the females had within their bodies numerous, large, elongated eggs, which they lay in their burrows. The inhabitants seek them for food. These two species of Amblyrhynchus agree, as I have already stated, in their general structure, and in many of their habits. Neither have that rapid movement, so characteristic of the genera Lacerta and Iguana. They are both herbivorous, although the kind of vegetation on which they feed is so very different. Mr. Bell has given the name to the genus from the shortness of the snout. Indeed, the form of the mouth may almost be compared to that of the tortoise. One is led to suppose that this is an adaptation to their herbivorous appetites. It is very interesting thus to find a well-characterized genus, having its marine and terrestrial species belonging to so confined a portion of the world. The aquatic species is by far the most remarkable, because it is the only existing lizard which lives on marine vegetable productions. As I at first observed, these islands are not so remarkable for the number of species of reptiles as for that of the individuals, when we remember the well-beaten paths made by the thousands of huge tortoises, the many turtles, the great warrens of the terrestrial Amblyrhynchus, and the groups of the marine species basking on the coast rocks of every island. We must admit that there is no other quarter of the world where this order replaces the herbivorous mammalia in so extraordinary a manner. The geologist, on hearing this, will probably refer back in his mind to the secondary epoch, when lizards, some herbivorous, some carnivorous, and of dimensions comparable only with our existing whales, swarmed on the land and in the sea. It is therefore worthy of his observation that this archipelago, instead of possessing a humid climate and rank vegetation, cannot be considered otherwise than extremely arid, and for an equatorial region remarkably temperate. To finish with the zoology, the 15 kinds of sea fish which I procured here are all new species. They belong to 12 genera, all widely distributed, with the exception of Prionotus, of which the 4 previously known species live on the eastern side of America. Of land shells I collected 16 kinds, and 2 marked varieties, of which, with the exception of one helix found at Tahiti, all other are peculiar to this archipelago. A single freshwater shell, Paludina, is common to Tahiti and Van Diemen's Land. Mr. Cumming, before our voyage, procured here 90 species of sea shells, and this does not include several species not yet specifically examined, of Trochus, Turbo, Monodonta, and Nassa. He has been kind enough to give me the following interesting results. Of the 90 shells, no less than 47 are unknown elsewhere. A wonderful fact, considering how widely distributed sea shells generally are. Of the 43 shells found in other parts of the world, 25 inhabit the western coast of America, and of these 8 are distinguishable as varieties. The remaining 18, including one variety, was found by Mr. Cumming in the Low Archipelago, and some of them also at the Philippines. This fact of shells from islands in the central parts of the Pacific occurring here deserves notice, for not one single sea shell is known to be common to the islands of that ocean and to the west coast of America. The space of open sea running north and south of the west coast separates 2 quite distinct conchological provinces, but at the Galapagos archipelago we have a halting place, where many new forms are being created, and whither these 2 great conchological provinces have each sent up several colonists. The American province has also sent here representative species, for there is a Galapagos species of Monoceros, a genus only found on the west coast of America, and there are Galapagos species of Fissurella and Cancerella, genera common on the west coast, but not found, as I am informed by Mr. Cumming, in the central islands of the Pacific. On the other hand, there are Galapagos species of Onicea and Stifla, genera common to the West Indies and to the Chinese and Indian seas, but not found either on the west coast of America or in the central Pacific. I may here add,